New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hey, my name is Lindsay Jacobson. I'm a senior producer with CNBC. We've been working from home for about a week now, and it's going okay. I'm very lucky in that I have a separate space where I can work. My partner works at home full time, so I've been invading his space a little bit, but so far so good. I did some research on how the US economy can perform while we're all dealing with the coronavirus outbreak, and how productive the American workforce can be while working remotely.
50 to 60% of the workforce holds a job that is at least partially compatible with remote work.
As of 2017, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated the civilian labor workforce at about 160 million employees. If 56% of those people are eligible for remote work, that means over 89 million people could potentially work from home. Of course, that leaves out 44% of the American workforce, but does provide alternative opportunities for a lot of people.
For us, the obvious choice was to really strongly encourage our employees to work from home.
The technology is here now that enables remote working to be really, really effective and productive.
While not all employees are eligible for remote work, the emptying of offices and mass transit limits exposure for those who still need to go to the office, like doctors, cleaning staff, police officers, firefighters, gig workers, and other service-related professionals. With the vaccine for COVID-19 still in the distant future, U.S. companies are individually taking steps to enable their remote workforces.
It's been really interesting to see the spike in usage that has actually unfortunately followed the spread of coronavirus.
With the coronavirus pandemic shuttering offices nationwide, can employers and employees adapt to a culture of remote work? Can the U.S. work from home? With many states, including Washington, New York, and Florida, and the federal government declaring states of emergencies, many companies are attempting to follow the trend of allowing remote work.
However, telecommuting, remote work, and working from home, which all entail similar experiences, have been on the rise for a while.
There's a lot of different things it's called: telecommuting, remote working, the future of work. It's absolutely something that is gaining in momentum.
The federal government has been required to every employee to work at home to the maximum extent possible since the year 2001.
Regular work at home has grown 173% since 2005.
The drivers tend to change with the economy, with whatever's going on in the world. So during the recession, it was about saving money, and that's what was driving CEOs to it. They found that if people were not in the building, they didn't have to pay as much for real estate. Right now, it's about attraction and retention of talent. There's a talent shortage, and people want flexibility in some cases more than salary. This past week, it has been continuity of operations and the coronavirus.
Over the course of the last really couple of years, we have been moving to a more distributed workforce.
Gallup's State of the American Workplace study found that 43% of employees work remotely with some frequency. Global Workplace Analytics found that 5 million employees, or 3.6% of the workforce, works at home at least half of the time. Research indicates that during a 5-day work week, working remotely for 2 to 3 days is the most productive. That gives employees 2 to 3 days of meetings and interaction and collaboration, with an opportunity to focus on just the work for the other 2 to 3 days of the week.
I think there's really 4 things that's driving it. Number one is, frankly, an increased focus on sustainability.
People in the United States who wanted to work from home, and that's about 80% of the population, say they'd like to do it at least some of the time, did at least 2.5 days a week, half time. It would be the greenhouse gas equivalent of taking the entire New York State workforce off the road permanently.
The other thing that it does is, obviously on the cost side, and there's a lot of costs associated with business travel, and so it helps companies address the costs.
We've calculated that a typical company saves about $11,000 per half-time telecommuter, somebody that's doing it 2.5 days a week per year.
However, not all companies agree that working remotely cuts costs.
Cost savings has never been a driver for us to distribute our workforce. If you reduce food service, for example, because not as many people are coming into the office, what I think that'll allow us to do is shift resources to allowing more support for people in their home office setup. Where you might save costs from an office perspective, I think if you're going to do it the right way, you've got to reinvest in other things.
There's another interesting thing that the millennials are not the ones that are working at home, but they're the ones that asked for it.
I would say the thing that we've seen in the last 2 years would be a change in the workforce itself, almost demanding workplace flexibility, the ability to work where they want to work, when they want to work.
That workplace flexibility has also allowed for a more diversified talent pool.
It's been more about talent and flexibility and being able to attract and retain the right folks for us. So getting kind of spreading our teams out, not being as concentrated in San Francisco for a number of reasons, in part to tap into broader pools of talent across the globe, and not just hire people who are only willing to work in San Francisco.
New England and Mid-Atlantic region employers are most likely to offer telecommuting options, and full-time employees are 4 times more likely to have remote work options than part-time employees. A typical remote worker is college educated, at least 45 years old, and earns an annual salary of $58,000 while working for a company with over 100 employees.
A lot of people think it's the millennials. A lot of people think it's moms. Both of those are wrong. It's about equal men and women, but it is skewed at the older, more experienced, more tenured, higher salary end of the spectrum. Actually, it's a little bit polar. There's this area at the very low end of the spectrum, the low income call center agents, that kind of thing, and then the sort of senior managers.
There used to be a perception that only particular jobs are able to work from home because everyone was essentially coming back to using applications that were sitting behind a firewall. Now, a lot of our applications are available just through an internet connection in the cloud.
As businesses evaluate how to properly protect their employees from the recent COVID-19 outbreak, many are basing their decisions on guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. The CDC recommends sick employees stay home from work until the criteria to discontinue home isolation are met. Employers should also ensure that sick leave policies are flexible and consistent with public health guidance. The CDC recommends that employers not require a doctor's note for employees who are sick, as healthcare provider offices may be extremely busy. The CDC also recommends employers maintain flexible policies to allow employees to care for sick family members. Employees who come to work sick should be separated from other employees and sent home immediately.
The CDC is a premier public health agency, and so it's important that they're able to spread their recommendations appropriately. We have to make it possible for people to follow those recommendations.
To help employees follow the guidelines for social distancing, many companies are implementing their business continuity plans, which incorporate a work-from-home policy. Companies like Twitter are requesting all employees work from home.
So people are just really thinking thoughtfully about how to get the same work done in a different way.
Some companies are installing a bi-weekly work-from-home policy. In that case, at least a portion of the workforce has their exposure limited, while work is still able to continue. Depending on an employee's role, companies are allowing remote work and testing its feasibility.
We're actually doing a rolling shutdown of offices around the world and testing, stress testing, if you will, to make sure we have business continuity in place, that we don't cause disruptions for our customers or our employees.
Remote work seems like a logical precaution for many companies that employ people in the digital economy. However, not all Americans have access to the internet at home or work in industries that require in-person work. According to the Pew Research Center, roughly 3/4 of American adults have broadband internet service at home. However, the study found that racial minorities, older adults, rural residents, and people with lower levels of education and income are more likely to not have broadband service at home. In addition, 1 in 5 American adults only access the internet through their smartphone and do not have traditional broadband access.
We did an analysis several years ago looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data in terms of what industries have components of remote work now, and it was virtually every industry. So construction, agriculture, there's some component of many, if not most jobs now that involve sitting in front of a computer, talking on the phone, whatever. I mean, certainly there are some industries that are leading, the tech industry, of course. Healthcare might surprise you, banking and finance.
However, there are many jobs that simply cannot be performed outside of the office. So allowing employees who can work remotely to do so protects those employees who need to commute to the office.
For healthcare providers, for educational schools, hospitals, municipalities, and nonprofits dealing with coronavirus, we're actually giving away what we call emergency remote work kits, which enable those companies to stand up workers really quickly.
This means LogMeIn, like other organizations, is offering its software services, including video conferencing and IT support, free of charge to eligible groups during the coronavirus pandemic. Other digital connecting sites like Slack and Skype have always had free versions available. This outbreak is testing the abilities of both software and broadband companies.
Many people also do not enjoy working from their own home, from their own couch. They can find it hard to concentrate, difficult to work in their home environment, be easily distracted, and have members of their family or neighbors not respect their time. Of course, all of these are heightened by the outbreak. Children have been kept home from schools, and many employees agreed to work from home without much notice or time to prepare.
We wouldn't have rolled it out in this accelerated pace. We would have taken it in more of a tiered approach. And wouldn't have rolled out virtual onboarding, for example, until we had it in a place where we thought it was in great shape or better shape. That said, I do think this is just accelerating the direction we were going anyway.
Coronavirus is going to be a tipping point. We plotted along at about 10% growth a year for the last 10 years. But I foresee that this is going to really accelerate the trend.
Adapting to working remotely or from home can be an adjustment for both employees and managers.
I think one of the most important things is having a door, having a place in your home where you can close the door, lock out the kids, lock out the dogs, and just concentrate. You have to be comfortable with technology. Knowing how to not just use GoToMeeting or Skype, but all of the tools, because you're going to be talking to people that are using different platforms, and you can't let that scare you. So there always is that fear. Are you working? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And so stay in touch with your boss and your colleagues more.
You need to replace those water cooler conversations with greater rigor around management and engagement. You have to force yourself to make sure that you're connecting with your team every day.
There's managers who are skeptical that are now starting to believe. I think there are employees that weren't sure that they could be productive or show up the right way if they were remote, that now like that flexibility and would want to continue it. When you have this kind of environment where everybody is remote, you feel like you're on this kind of level playing field.
We've actually seen companies have a site leader for remote workers, someone who represents the needs and expectations of remote workers to management.
If they're going to work hard in the office, they're going to work hard at home. If they're going to slack off in an office, they're going to slack off at home. I don't think people fundamentally change who they are as a human just because they're working from home.
Telecommuting all comes down to trust. Study after study, academic, practical, shows that they're more productive. In fact, they give back about 60% of the time they would have otherwise spent commuting to working. In fact, one of the biggest problems for people who work at home is turning it off.
At some point, we will return to normal. And once the countrywide stress test of remote work is over, some company cultures may change to be more open to telework.
I don't think we'll go back to the same way we used to operate. I really don't.